Today we're talking about biblical locations in Africa. And I want to start off by looking at these three scriptures here. And the first one is in Genesis 10, verse 6. Many of you are familiar with this scripture. And pay attention to the words that I have put in bold, because we will be looking at those in more detail today. And the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. Genesis 10, verse 8 to 11. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Zambi, wherever it is said. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Zambi, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, or Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Ashur, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth, and Calah. Okay, if you're making notes, make notes of those locations in bold, because we will be talking about them. And I don't want you to forget any revelations or insights that you get. The children of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram. Okay, that's a lot. But I will come back to the slide if you request me to during the discussion. Let's go straight into it with a quick introduction. This is from the book of Jubilees. Okay, and Ham divided amongst his sons, and the first portion came forth for Cush towards the east. And to the west of Cush, him, for Mizraim. For those of you who might not be aware, Cush is present day Ethiopia, Sudan area. And west of him, we're talking about Mizraim, which would be present day Misri in Swahili, which is also called Egypt in English. And to the west of him, so to the west of Egypt, Phut or Put. Some Bibles say that as Libya in the verses in Genesis chapter 10. And to the west of Phut and west thereof on the sea for Canaan. So now we're talking all the way from Angola and the sea all the way down, that was assigned to Canaan. I am not necessarily going to go through all the stuff that I've highlighted here, but I just want to mention that in green or blue color is Elam, and he's assigned territory east of the river Tigris. We will see where the river Tigris is. And notice it talks about the whole land of India and on the Red Sea and its coast. We can go and look at that in detail. We touched some of that. There's also a river called Tina inside here. There's Ashur, who got a portion in Nineveh and Shinar. Some other places were mentioned. Arphaxad got a portion to the east of the Euphrates River. We talked about the Euphrates, bordering on the Red Sea, and then we have Aram, and we also have Ashur mentioned again. And finally, we have Lud over here. Okay. Few other highlights. This is also from just some websites, some historical websites. The key thing here I want to mention is that ancient Media and Persia were Cushite territory. So I know from most of us, we may think of somewhere near Arabia and Iraq and Iran when we think about Media and Persia. Okay, that might begin to shift as you get to see more and more of this information, because we know the Cushites were predominantly, who we've just seen, living in Sudan and that area of Ethiopia and around Egypt. So that's where we expect to find this Media and the Persians. And I have a map that will show media actually in Africa. Interestingly, the Persians were so famous under Cyrus that they were called Elamites. Okay. The Code of Manu of India said that the Persians were originally one of the divisions of their race. And then here I just highlighted some interesting things about this region that they were in, that was Kushite, this Media and Persia region. Their region had a lot of valleys, and parts of Media were protected from winds. The fruits that were growing there, apples, pears, peaches, even the vines were flourishing. They also grow vegetables, cereals, on other Kushite sites, pumpkins, melons, cucumbers, wheat, barley, millet, sesame, corn, and rice. They were flourishing with cotton and tobacco fields, and the Media was rich in minerals and stone. Think about all those things when we start looking at the regions that claim to be Media, or the regions that have been hidden as being Media. All right, now I'm going to show you some names here. And what I'm hoping to do here as we discuss these names is to expose the hidden truths, or to expose what was covered up. Okay, so Elam, according to the concordance, that's the number in the concordance, means eternity. And one of the ways that the word Elam is used, it's referring to a place. Of course, the name refers to eternity, but there's a place called Elam, which is a province east of Babylon. So wherever you say Babylon is, towards the east of that, you should expect that that is where you have Elam's descendants living or lived there. And also it's northwest, the same place is northwest of the lower Tigris. What is interesting here is that when you go into this root word for Elam, you find something that doesn't seem to connect with this word Elam that means eternity. I mean, maybe I'm not seeing it, but I don't understand why this root word means to hide, to blind, dissemblers, hidden, secret thing. It's all about hiding and secret things and concealment. What does that have to do with Elam? Could it be that they are actually incorrect in this? Because I even noticed, if you see here, they say probably from this word. Whether it was deliberate or not deliberate, I don't know, I wouldn't judge, but there's a disconnect between the meaning of eternity and to conceal or to hide over there. All right, Elam, if you just look up Wikipedia, this is one of the things you'll find out. Elam was also known as Susiana, and that name Susiana was derived from its capital, Susa. Remember that word Susa. We're going to see a map, an older map that shows a place called Susa. Okay, so it's the same place. I mean, the name is derived from Elam, was also known as Susiana, and we've just learned about where that place should be, in the previous slide, province east of Babylon, northwest of the lower Tigris. All right. This is an image that I found somebody had put together, and I'll give credit to this YouTube channel called How Can I Be Free? The awakening is going on, people. People are really researching this. And this person, they've done a lot of digging. And these are some of the locations where they've marked that they believe this were the biblical scriptural locations. So they're not sure about Canaan and Midian or Madai, and they're also not sure about Lud. These are sons of Shem. But notice that, they place Aram around here. This is in West Africa, around Nigeria, Burkina Faso area. I tend to agree with that. They place Damasak here. I have actually seen on Google Maps a place called Damasek. This is what they modified and called Damascus. Okay, And we're going to look at what this name Aram is currently written as in our scriptures. We'll see some more concealment there. Then, of course, Ashur, he says that should be around there. I have seen a place called Ashur in Africa, and it's around where this letter M for Aram is. So he's not too far off from what I have seen, and I agree with him. Notice he has Shinar or Susa in that region. We just talked about that word Susa, which also means Elam. And he is saying this Eastern Horn of Africa region, he believes would be where Elam was living. And Arphaxad was living in this whole territory stretching from around here all the way down towards East Africa. Now, I'm guessing many of you may never have seen something like this. This is a computer-generated map of what is believed to be the Pangea, the landmass before the continent split, the single landmass, okay? I thought this was very interesting. Again, I'll give credit to this same YouTube channel. I thought it was very interesting because he highlighted the fact that if you look at Elam, if you can see this is Africa, this is East Africa, Kenya and Somalia. Elam was this Horn of Africa area, like where Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia would be, and even parts of Sudan and South Sudan. This would be where Elam would be. And there was a note that I found in the previous slides that was talking about this land stretched towards India. Now, if this was written, if this notes and history is correct, and this was written at the time when the landmass was still one, because here we're talking about Noah's, children. I'm sorry, Shem's children. Noah had Shem, and then Shem had these guys, Elam, Arphaxad, and these guys. If this was before the landmass had split into the different continents, it's possible. I think it's possible that, referring to India, you're not necessarily referring to the India of today, but an India which was close to Africa if these continents had not yet split. So I just thought I might share that, might enlighten our orientation to how we think of things today versus how they possibly were in the past. Okay, let's get back to talking about some names. Okay, Ashur. This is a major, major, major deception that is going on or has been going on, and it's time for us to stop it. Let me hide these controls. So this is the concordance, Ashur, pronounced Ashur. Okay, this is one of the sons of Shem. Notice that this word Ashur is used in the scriptures 151 times. But then, out of those 151 times, only 8 times is it used as Ashur. So all the other 143 times, somebody thought it wise for them to change it to Assyria. Right? 118 times Assyria, 19 times Assyrian, Assyrian, Ashur. Okay, we can say this one is close, so let's make it 9. But 9 out of 151 times, you label it as Assyria. And where is that Assyria coming from? If the scriptures say the name was Ashur, where is Assyria coming from? Now, maybe this is where they got it from. See, they're saying apparently from, okay? So the fact that it says apparently, they're not sure. But then they're saying when you go to this root word, you get the word Ashar. Still, that doesn't mean Assyria. I don't understand how that got translated into Assyria from Ashur, okay? And the meanings are different here. Ashur means a step. Of course, it's the name of the second son of Shem. But then now we're talking about the root word that means blessed, lead, guide, happy, leaders, relieve. Okay, so imagine that every time you see the word Assyria, or at least most times you see the word Assyria in your scriptures, first of all, it makes you think of a place in near Iraq and Iran. Okay, and that's already confusing you or misleading. Whereas if they had put the name Ashur, we would not be associating that place in Iraq or Iran with Ashur, because it should really be Ashur and not Assyria. All right, let's keep going. Let's look at Aram, okay, another son of Shem. Again, some more deception. Word is used 132 times, okay? Only 7 times do they maintain the original word, which is Aram. What do they do instead? They tell us about Syria. Syria, 67 times. Syrians, 56 times. Syria, Damascus. Syria, Amak. Something is not right here. How does this get translated from Aram to Syria? If I go to the root word here, okay, actually, before I go to the root word, the meaning of Aram is exalted, okay? And here in the notes, it says it's the same as this word H759, which means highland. Highland and exalted mean the same. And I can see here when I go to this root word, I find that it means to be elevated. That sounds like exalted. That sounds like a highland. Where did Syria come from? Something is not adding up here. If for you it does, please make notes and tell me how it adds up when we get to the discussion time. Interestingly, when I was preparing this notes, the wonder reminded me of this scripture in Luke. For whoever exalts himself shall be abased or shall be humbled, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. If you're all familiar with world events, you probably know that the country of Syria has been in political turmoil since 2011. I wonder if that has something to do with that nation exalting itself. Just a thought. That just came to me as I was preparing this. All right, let's go on. There's a guy called Akkad, okay? Akkad, this is the scripture we read earlier on. Akkad means subtle, okay? And they say it's a city north of Babylonia or Babylon, okay? And they say here, though this is somebody is giving us their views, that it's a possible identification or confusion with Agade, okay? Now, Akkad, when you go, they say from an unused root, probably meaning to strengthen, but it means that there. Now, I also put the word Shinar here, because here we see that at the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was Babel or Babylon and Erech and Akkad in the land of Shinar. So these places are in a land of Shinar, which we're going to talk about. And Shinar is a country of 2 rivers. The ancient name for the territory later known as Babylonia or Chaldea. Okay, so that's Shinar. Just your Wikipedia source. You know, nowadays we don't have to go to the library and open the Britannica Encyclopedia. We can get some encyclopedias online. Look at what Akkad is defined as. Now, I know Wikipedia is not always right, but I think there's some good information here. And the information is that Akkad, spelled with double K, which is very common, is also spelled with double C in English, just like we saw with Sukkot last week, where Sukkot is spelled originally with the double K. In English, it's spelled with the double C. It's also spelled Agade. It's not far from Cush, which is written here as Kish, and Babylon, near the Tigris River. Okay, it's possibly mentioned in Genesis 10:10. It lists what we've just read, the cities of Nimrod in Sumer. Notice that Sumer, which we have in history as Sumeria, is referencing the same region of Shinar. Okay, you can see it here. In the early days of Assyriology, it was suggested that the name of Agade is not Akkadian language, of Akkadian language origin. Proposals include Sumerian language. So Sumeria is synonymous with Shinar. You know, whenever I read my history growing up, before this awakening, I thought Sumeria was in the Middle East. I thought Mesopotamia was in the Middle East. Turns out it's in Africa. Let's keep going. Now we're going to get to some maps. Then we're going to the discussion. We just looked at a card. That's number one here in the image at the top, Agades. This is a map from about 400, 500 years ago. I believe it's the same map that I was using a few weeks ago when I was talking about the river Niger, sorry, not the Niger River, but the great river, the Euphrates River, this river here. There is a card here. Down below this word BIA is Shinar, which is Shinar that we just looked at. And below it might not be very legible, but you have Shinar or Susa. Remember Elam, whose name was derived as Susa from Susiana? It's in that land. And Shinar is also Susa. This is in present-day Sudan, I believe. Egypt is up here, you know, Ethiopia, and you'd go on and so forth. This is in this maps drawn by Europeans in the 1400s to 1700s. Down here, we have Midian. Okay, let's go down. Here's another map, and I've arranged the next few maps according to the oldest to the most recent ones. This one is dated around 1448. Okay. It was drawn between this period of 1448 to 1552. This is the River Nile, and Babylon is marked as being towards the east of these two rivers diverging. You know, that's Babylon, seen very clearly, you know, and it's not going to be the only map. Remember, that was 1400s to 1500s. It's estimated that's when the map was drawn. This one was drawn 1525. And I'll be remiss if I don't give credit to Truth Unveil's YouTube channel. This guy has done a lot of work over the last 3 years. I recommend you go in there and watch a bunch of those videos. You will get reoriented really quick geographically. Now, what does he have on this map here? He has Media. Again, very similar to what we just looked at that just showed Median in the other place. There's even Meroe here, M-E-R-O-E. Okay. You have Babylon, which is Babylon. Okay. This is the River Nile. This is in the area of Egypt up here and Sudan down here, just like in the other map. And this map is in 1525. Clearly written by a Latin-speaking kind of person, because we can see words like Kalitai, which are maybe derivatives of Latin and Portuguese or Spanish, something like that. Again, on the Horn of Africa, they have Babylon there. Let's look at another map, 1552. Again, we have Babylon here to the right of the Nile, or in that area. There's a location here, just a plus. We didn't have this one in the scripture, but it's Ammon. This is a word that is in the scriptures also. And I noticed two other words on here. Cyrene, just above this red dot. don't know if you can see it, Cyrene. I remember Simon the Cyrene, or of Cyrene. We have Meroe down here, where the Blue Nile and the White Nile meet. I think that's just above Khartoum today. Again, these are maps mostly drawn by Europeans. Okay, this was not very clear, but it's showing that Ammon area again, and Babylon again in that same region, slightly to the right of the River Nile there. All right. Here's another map similar to that, but this one is from 1706. I mean, these guys have been documenting these things. Look at this, 1667, 1706, somebody else draws a map, Babylon. It cannot be a coincidence that you have these same locations appearing on maps drawn over hundreds of years, you know, in some cases 200 years later or 300 years later, and they have the same locations of these sites. But then as we got closer to present day, those names disappeared somehow, right? It's not a coincidence. We're gonna unveil and uncover all these hidden truths. Okay, Shinar. Okay, again, along the Nile, I apologize, the map is not very clear, but I think you get the general idea. You have the River Nile there, splits to the right. I believe that's called the Blue Nile. And this one on the left is the White Nile. And remember Shinar, we just saw in the scripture, called it the country of two rivers. Why does it appear right there where you have those two rivers? Just like Tatanzambe said in the scriptures, you know, it's along the Nile, present day Sudan. This is a map from 1806 by those people there. Thank you for drawing this map and keeping the information for us to see, to those people. And again, credits to Truth Unveiled. This is where I got this maps from. All right, this is the final map I have for today. Again, that Nile splits, then to the right, you get these parts of it. You can see the Nile here. It says here the name, Nile River. And it splits to the right, and then you have a tributary, and it's called Tigris or Tigray. And in the region of Shinar, right here, so Shinar is pretty much this area between the two rivers, present day Sudan. Okay, I believe that's it, but let me go back a little bit. There's just one slide I had intended to show, but I think I mistakenly hid it and it did not show. I'm gonna unhide it and just talk about it for a minute, and then we can. So my apologies for that. So we were looking at Shem's children, mostly. These are Noah's children. You have Shem, Japheth, and Ham. And we've looked at Elam, Ashur. We didn't talk much about Arphaxad, but it's from Arphaxad that we have Abraham and Jacob and the Bantus. But we talked about Aram and a little bit about Lud. Just wanted to give you this chart, the table of nations, for some orientation. And also, let me mention one more thing before we get into the discussion. Okay, so from Shem, we know came the Bantus, the Israelites from Jacob. Japheth, for those of you who may not be aware of this, it says here that Japheth, and it says this in our scriptures, that these were the descendants of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tiras. And then it says these are the descendants of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, Canaan, who we discussed about. I have reason to believe, and I really want to discuss this in our discussion session. I have reason to believe that Japheth and Ham have been interchanged in most of our scriptures. And one of the main reasons I say that is because if you even go into the into YouTube, I mean, not YouTube, but Google today, and you type in the word Egypt and ask for a translation to isiXhosa or Xhosa, South African language, it's going to translate Egypt as Japheth. The second reason I say that is that these are European nations. There's no way that Noah and his wife would produce Africans, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, Canaan, and Bantus, Africans, and also produce Europeans. These people have a different DNA type than we do, and than these guys do. The book of Genesis, I think it's chapter 12, can't remember the verse, might be 27, or chapter 9, verse 27, one of those, I'll find it. It says that Shem and Japheth will live under the same tent. If you take Japheth and place him here to be the father of Cush, Mizraim, these Africans, then you'll find that Shem is really indeed living in the same continent, in the same land as Japheth. These guys are off the continent and they have a different DNA. They do not come from the same parents. Let me stop presenting now.